EAGLES, Eagles.
Before I even say anything, Bill, before I even say welcome, just congratulations to everyone who just made it through yet another preseason, who made it through this third preseason game where we could play a game of real athlete or, I don't know, just made-up name that participated in tonight's action, especially there in the fourth quarter. So congratulations. We got 16 days between now and the regular season kickoff in New England at Gillette Stadium against the Patriots. So I can't wait for that. But until then, welcome in to the Pod and Lehocky Postgame Show presented by our friends at Ocean Casino. Right there is the man himself, Bill Colarulo, joining us right here. Bill, how you doing, man?
Not too bad, Farzy. We are officially done with the preseason, so I am excited, man.
as am I. And I found myself, there's about 5 minutes left in the third quarter of tonight's game, Bill. There's about 5 minutes left in the third quarter. I'm thinking, oh, dear God, there's a whole other quarter of this. And literally thought that went through my brain. And then I found myself with about 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. I was like, holy, well, hold on a minute. I'm now counting down the minutes. I'm counting down the seconds, Bill, till we actually kick off the regular season in New England. I found myself actually being like, yes, another minute has gone by. It's another minute closer to the regular season. And although I feel terrible for guys that are going to get a terrible news on Tuesday when cutdown day happens with the Eagles and around the NFL for the post preseason, post training camp type of cutdown days, what we've all seen on Hard Knocks by now and heard plenty of stories about it. I found myself just looking forward to the moment where we can finally say this Eagles team, this final 53, this final practice squad, this is the team the Eagles are going to take into the 2023 season. I know that excitement has to be cutting to you as well, Bill.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't want to disrespect these guys who are putting it all out on the line trying to make the team, but that was just a really tough brand of football to watch tonight. And, what made it even worse is it's our third stringers, and you have Anthony Richardson taunting the crowd in a preseason game. Like, come on, man. Come on.
I mean, even if that's our guy, I know people like to turn it around and be like, well, what if that's our guy? If that's our guy, I think we're saying the same thing. Like, okay, dude, it's the preseason. You're a rookie. You're just learning it. You were the third quarterback taken. There's two others. So just cool your jets for a second in this preseason action. So I agree with you on that. And I do think if it was our own guys, let's say it was Jalen Hurts getting his reps as a rookie and he's doing something like that, I think we're like, all right, just pump the brakes there, fella. All right, just pump the brakes. But all in all, this is what we got today. We got Dan Sileo coming up in about 20 minutes. Will join us for 20 minutes in 20 minutes. So I look forward to talking to Big Sills himself on the program. Then we're going to be joined by John McMullen coming up a little bit later from Lincoln Financial Field. And then a fine contributor of the JAKIB Media YouTube family to the JAKIB Media YouTube family, Kayla Santiago, will be joining us to talk all things Eagles, not only this preseason, but the expectations for the year. Let's just jump into this game and break down what we saw tonight. Sort of a quick stock up, stock down type of scenario here, Bill. Was there anyone that really jumped off the field to you that said, you know what, this person tonight really helped their stock when trying to at least make the practice squad or trying to make the 53-man roster?
Yeah, well, before you even get into the stock up, stock down from the game itself, Nick Sirianni really tipped his hand by not dressing certain players that I was surprised we didn't see. I mean, Rashad Penny, I really thought he was battling with Trey Sermon for that final running back position. Penny doesn't even dress. And the weird thing was he dresses all the safeties except for Reed Blankenship. And then Zach Cunningham doesn't dress. So it looks like we know who our starting linebackers are with Nakobe Dean and Zach Cunningham. But as far as the guys who played, the two guys who I thought really improved their stock, I don't know if it's going to be enough for them to make the team, but one was Eli Ricks. I mean, this guy battles, man. I really love the way he battles out there as that cornerback. But we'll see. It depends on how many corners they want to keep because the Eagles are deep at corner. And the other guy was Devin Allen. We finally saw him able to use that speed on that nice kickoff return. But the Eagles didn't dress Britton Covey. They don't dress Olamide Zaccheaus. So it looks like unless they're going to keep, 6 wide receivers, which I don't think they're going to do, I don't see how Devin Allen makes this team either. But that's a guy who may have improved his stock. Can they sneak him onto the practice squad again? You know, we'll see if they can do that, but he's getting up there. Devin Allen's 28 years old. So I don't know if he's a guy that they're going to put on their practice squad, but outside of those two guys, I didn't think anybody really did that great tonight. I mean, Trey Sermon got a lot of carries, but didn't really impress me at all. Mariota, at least it wasn't a disaster on the one series he had. But other than that, it just wasn't a great performance by the Eagles tonight.
No, it certainly wasn't. As far as Rashad Penny, I really think that the Eagles are looking at him like everyone else is looking at him. Like, just cut your losses. Like, quit while you're ahead. He's still healthy. Now you have an opportunity for him to get out of the preseason healthy. I never really had a doubt that he was going to make the squad. The guy that I felt like they were overselling was Trey Sermon. Yeah. I almost felt bad for him because of the amount of times that they gave him the football tonight. They weren't able to really turn a lot of plays around. And the one big run that he did have was turned around due to a penalty. But as far as Marcus Mariota went, I felt like there was one particular pass where there was a pass interference. I forget who it was on the Colts, interfered with Dan Arnold, who was trying to come down with the football. They hit him a little bit early before the ball got there. It wasn't called. I thought it was a good throw from Mariota. Then he had a good scramble play running actually to his left before he was able to go downfield and hit Kane maybe in that first quarter. And then, of course, McKee took over after the one possession there by the Eagles. But Eli Ricks, the first name that you mentioned, I thought he really struggled in the first half. I thought he was getting beat on slants 2 or 3 different times. He got beat on slants. And then, the other thing on that was Michael Pittman was playing in this game. Like, I understand you want to get some camaraderie, some chemistry between the rookie quarterback and one of your best receivers. Okay, Shane Steichen, that's the way you want to do things. That's the way you want to do things. And then, of course, he ended up leaving the game there with I think it was an ankle injury. But I think he's okay. After that, Eli Ricks, I thought in the third quarter, really turned it on. He had one series where he had back-to-back shutdowns where he had blanketed coverage and he had his head up. He broke up a pass, and then the other, he was just all over his receiver. So I thought in the second half, he really responded well to a guy that really needed to make some plays to help his status with his team. Not that I ever thought he was ever a chance of being cut, but just as an opportunity to see what he could do on the football field. Keely Ringo had some opportunities in this. He got beat on a few slants as well. He got beat on an out route late in the game. That I thought as the game went on, he did improve as the game went on today. And then I looked at some other guys. Ben Von Sumeren, I think at best a practice squad guy, had a bad pass interference call after Janaris Jackson had that misplay behind the line of scrimmage where he had a sack dead to rights and just let the quarterback slip through his fingers, unfortunately. But there were some guys that did jump off and I think helped their situation. One of them for me is a guy that I think the Eagles have been rooting for a while here in Tyree Jackson. I don't know if he's got a chance to make the 53, maybe the practice squad, but there were a couple of plays that he had, most notably with Tanner McKee while he was in the game. There was one play that he did make for Ian Book, I think it was. But he was a guy that I actually thought looked like a pretty decent tight end. And there was a sack that McKee took in this game that he had Jackson open in the flat on a fine out route. And then just as he was about to make the play, the rush got in his face. He tried to step up and they brought him down, but he had him wide open. I think that would have been another opportunity for Jackson there. But he was one guy that I thought it wasn't great, but if anything, helped his stock. And I know he's one of the guys that the Eagles are certainly rooting for with the quarterback transfer over to tight end and a guy that has obviously dealt with injury, a guy that they have kept around. I felt like he helped himself a little bit in this game.
Yeah, I've been hoping that Tyree Jackson could stay healthy. I was real high on him a couple years ago, and it just hasn't come to fruition. But I think there's no way he makes this roster in light of the fact that the Eagles are not going to keep 4 tight ends. And you got Dallas Goedert. They don't even dress Grant Calcaterra or Jack Stoll. That's who I thought he could potentially beat out, would have been Grant Calcaterra.
Me too,
Last year, Calcaterra, he can catch the ball, but he had some problems run blocking. And on this Eagles team, your tight ends have to be able to block. They're an extension of the offensive line. But without the Eagles dressing him, I think they made the decision that they're not going to keep Tyree Jackson. Maybe they could sneak him onto the practice squad. We'll see. They have 16 spots on that practice squad. But yeah, that's a guy I think you're right, though. I thought he looked pretty good tonight from that position. It's just whether or not he can stay healthy. A guy that really didn't help himself tonight, and somebody just commented in the comments on this, was Joe Nagata. He started out training camp really, really strong.
Yeah.
Thought he had a chance to make this team as the wide receiver, but he has that bad fumble tonight, really has started to tail off. Maybe he's another guy that they bring back on the practice squad, but I don't think he's going to make the 53.
Yeah, by the way, speaking of the safety position, as we were a second ago, I don't think Terrell Edmonds dressed for tonight's game.
He did. He did play.
He did. Okay.
He got a few reps. He got a few reps in there, but he played the least out of all of the safeties that they did dress, which I think was tipping their hand a little bit that he's probably going to be the guy that starts opposite of Reed Blankenship. He did play a few snaps early.
Okay.
Kavon Wallace played a ton. Sidney Brown played a ton. So they're probably going to be guys that are going to be the backups here. But yeah, and Sidney Brown, as high as me and you were on him after the first preseason game, you saw some of the issues that they have with him. He's got to wrap his arms when he goes to tackle. I know he wants to bring those big hits, but that's an issue he has where he doesn't wrap his arms, and guys are going to be in the NFL. Guys are going to be able to break those tackles. You got to wrap your arms. But yeah, I think you're going to probably see Reed Blankenship and Terrell Edmonds, and hopefully Sidney Brown can continue to grow and eventually take over for that position.
Third quarter, there was a rush up the middle that Brown just whiffed on. There was two guys on the ball carrier. I forget who. I think it was Hall for the Colts at that point. Two guys on the ball carrier, and Sidney Brown came up to make it was the definition of what everyone says you should be worried about with Sidney Brown, where he comes up to it. There's an easy play to be made, but he goes for the home run hit. He goes for the grand slam hit. And all you got to do is wrap up and just help everybody else take the guy down, and just completely whiffed on it. It was bad. And he got a lot of snaps tonight. He had a lot of opportunities to show what he could do, and unfortunately, it just wasn't there. Yeah, it was a really high bar set after the first week of the preseason, and then in games 2, and then tonight, game 3, left a lot to be desired, but they certainly did give him the opportunity. My expectation, my desire and my prediction are two different things when it comes to Sidney Brown. And we talk about the startup costs a lot with him, and I'd still want the Eagles to start him week 1 against the Patriots, get the startup costs out of the way. My prediction is that Terrell Edmonds is your starting safety, and I think to your point, yeah, I didn't even notice him out there on the football field, and I didn't even show up in the box score. But he goes out there and he starts the game. Then you don't see him the rest of the way. So I think it's a pretty safe bet that he will be the guy. Then Kayvon Wallace is getting reps in the fourth quarter when you're not seeing Sidney Brown out there in the fourth quarter. So I thought that also, to your point, shows the hand of Sean Desai, Nick Sirianni, as well as Howie Roseman for what their plans are at the safety position. But I do think week 1, Terrell Edmonds is out there. I think he's the safest bet. You go with the experience next to a guy who only has 1 year under his belt as a starting safety, not even a full year as a starting safety in the NFL as Reed Blankenship. Then you're going to go probably as the season goes on. Sidney Brown hopefully matures. Sidney Brown hopefully gets that experience under his belt and improves overall. And then you'll see him most likely with Reed Blankenship as the year goes on. But the Eagles are going to do the safe bet. Start out with Terrell Edmonds. And Kayvon Wallace, for me, seeing him to get snaps in the fourth quarter, I don't think it's too much of a far-fetched thing to read into it. This is the guy that was getting first-team reps, splitting that with Terrell Edmonds. Then all of a sudden, I think he's fallen behind Sidney Brown. And Justin Evans was supposed to be a guy that also possibly make his way into getting some more significant reps. I don't know if that's going to be the case either. But fourth quarter reps for Kayvon Wallace, a guy that was getting first-team reps early on in training camp and really even through the middle of training camp, that was a little surprising to see him out there in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, what we were concerned about all offseason was the linebacker and the safety position, and I still don't feel extremely comfortable going into this season with those two positions. You look at the linebacker position, Zach Cunningham, they signed him 11 days ago. And this isn't a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson type of situation where it was a last minute trade to bring in a really high caliber starter. Zach Cunningham was released by the Houston Texans. So you got to hope that he's ready to go. He did look good in his preseason snaps that he got, but that's a big question mark. And then, yeah, on safety, who is your other starter? Terrell Edmonds, hopefully he's going to be ready. But Justin Evans, Kevon Wallace, Sidney Brown, a lot of question marks there. But look, you look at this roster, they're extremely deep. You can't have all pros at every single position. So really, they're the only two question marks I have on this team as we're about to go into the regular season finally.
I got to say, if I have to have what I'll define as blind optimism, like I got nothing to show you like from an NFL career as to why I should believe in Nakobe Dean other than one game last year against the Titans. He had like a tackle for loss. He got significant reps because it was 35-10. That's where he got a lot of his snaps on the defensive side of the football and what the 34 he had in his rookie season. But I got confident. Bringing in Zach Cunningham makes me feel a lot better about it. I think Christian Ellis can play. I think Nicholas Morrow is still going to make the squad. I think those are guys that can play. I don't think there are guys that are going to cost you a game. I think they can play. And the upside is definitely there with Zach Cunningham and certainly with Nakobe Dean. But the safety position for me, I still think is the biggest question mark. Offensively, I feel like you're set. I feel like people are going to have to get used to the idea that this is going to be a more or less running back by committee, more so than what we have seen in years past. I've said it before. I think DeAndre Swift leads you in touches, but I think Kenny Gainwell leads you in carries. And I think Rashad Penny is going to be that in case of emergency break glass, and Rashad Penny is behind that. And they're going to use him sparingly to make sure they can keep him healthy as much as possible. But to your point about the safeties, either way, I don't think that you have anybody out there other than Reed Blankenship, who has showed you at least through a limited sample size last year that he can make a play. Picking off Aaron Rodgers, I think, in your first start, that's a good start to your NFL career. Making plays on Saquon Barkley in the backfield in the regular season, the playoffs, that's also a nice start to your career. But Terrell Edmonds, I think, is going to be, as I said before, the safe bet. I think he is going to be a guy that they can rely on to not give up the big play, which is the number one qualification of any defense that Nick Sirianni's team is running schematically. Not just Sean Desai, but that's what Nick Sirianni likes to see from his defense, to not allow the big play. Don't allow the chunk play. We talked about it a lot this week leading up to the game. But when it comes to the Terrell Edmonds, I think he's the best bet to do that, to just play a safe style of safety for this Eagles team. But after that, it's a lot of question marks. I agree. Still, if you're just looking to go into the season and say, well, what would you assume to be the weakest? It would be linebacker and it would be safety. But for me personally, I got optimism that Nakobe Dean's going to have himself a very good rookie year.
Yeah, I have optimism in Nakobe Dean as well. I mean, how could you not, looking at what he did at college? It's just we haven't seen him do it at the NFL level. Doesn't mean he's not going to. We're all hoping that he will. It's just we haven't seen him do it. He only played 34 defensive snaps last year, but the Eagles are very confident in him. Obviously, they made the decision in the offseason he was going to be their guy before this training camp even started. So let's hope he's ready. And really, that defensive line is going to be so damn good that if they can generate even close to the amount of pressure that they generated last year, which you would think they could, because they lost Javon Hargrave and they're replacing him with Jalen Carter, which I can't remember a rookie getting so many high praises from veterans in training camp. Usually they try to keep these rookies humble. And every single veteran on this team has come out and said, this guy is the real deal. He just got called, Baby Rhino. They're just really building this guy up. So you got to hope that if they can generate that interior pressure from the defensive tackle position, it's going to be really hard on opposing offenses. And you could really make up for a lot with your linebackers and your safeties if your front four can generate the type of pressure that I think they're going to be able to generate.
And to further that point, I can't remember a time where a veteran who played phenomenally well in his role as a defensive tackle, Javon Hargrave, and being able to get after the quarterback. I can't remember a veteran like Javon Hargrave last year in any other capacity. A guy like that leaving and a rookie coming in, and the attitude. Now, no one has said this because I don't want to put that pressure on him yet, but the attitude is, we're not missing anything. Like, Javon Hargrave's gone. Jalen Carter's here. We actually upgraded. Like, that's the type of attitude I'm getting. That's the type of expectation I'm getting from the veterans you just talked about. The way they talk about Jalen Carter, it's like they don't want to disrespect Javon Hargrave at all. Jalen Carter's going to come in here and he's going to handle his business. He's going to be moving bodies. As a young man in the NFL, he is going to be I don't want to say the word dominant, but he is going to be an impactful player on this defensive line. And look, you put him next to Fletcher Cox, that certainly helps him. You get the complete defense that you have here as far as your line and as far as your outside linebackers, that of Nolan Smith and obviously Hassan Reddick. And then you get guys like Brandon Graham coming off the edge, Josh Sweat coming off the edge. That's going to make and also Jordan Davis being here to spell him and also come in and do his own thing, maybe even play the defensive end position from time to time. It's going to make things easier for Jalen Carter in the middle of that line of scrimmage to make sure that he is moving mountains in the interior offensive line.
Yeah, and you mentioned another guy, Farzy, Josh Sweat. Don't be surprised if we see Josh Sweat have another career year. This guy has improved every single season since he's come into the league, and he's kind of going under the radar in training camp, but he's a really, really good defensive end, and I think he's going to put up some big numbers this year, especially when you got to pick your poison if you're the opposing offense. Who are you going to double team on this defensive line? So Josh Sweat's probably going to get a lot of single tackle, and he's just so athletic, gets so low to the ground coming around the edge. This is going to be a fun defense to watch again. Just like on the offense with the new offensive coordinator, Sean Desai being the new defensive coordinator, there may be some growing pains, but you got to really hope that the schedule sets up nicely for the Eagles. I know they have a really tough schedule starting in week 9, but these first 8 games kind of allow them to hopefully find their footing with their offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and some of these new positions. But these guys, these veterans that are coming back, the D-line, the offensive line, they should continue to dominate and really help this team.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, coming up, we're going to talk to the man, Dan Sileo, here of the National Football Show on JAKIB Media. But before we do that, let me just tell you, Chuck Hutton, I see you in the chat there. Jerome Brown comes to mind. Sure, let's get nuts. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. When talking about Jalen Carter, We'll be back with Dan Sileo here on the Lehocky Postgame Show.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go first!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go first!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Lehocky, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Welcome back on the Lehocky Postgame Show. My name's Marc Farzetta. That's Bill Colarulo. And right there, ladies and gentlemen, you know you love him from the National Football Show right here on JAKIB Media. Dan Sileo.
You asked for it, I bring it. There it is, Jerome Brown. You asked for it, there it is.
I think, hey, look, I'm all for, piping hot takes, but when I look down in the chat and I see Jerome Brown after we mentioned Jalen Carter, I just want to be like,
Mark, I'll tell you this, though. I mean, coming out of college, when people go like this about Carter, great feet, great hands, moves well, he's got all the things that Jerome had when I played next to him. And you saw now going into the NFL, was he going to be that player? Obviously, that's the big question. But I think that kid's got all the skill set to be that kind of player. And I've said that since draft day, that to me, I thought he was the best player in the draft. And if he didn't have those unfortunate circumstances, I think that guy would have been, probably because the quarterback is probably the premium position. Still, for me, he would have been a top 3.
Yeah, Sil, what's up, man? It's Bill Colarulo, by the way.
Good,
I'm not
man.
sure we ever met. Do you remember a rookie getting this much praise from the veteran guys on the team? Usually they try to keep these guys down. It's amazing.
That to me, I'll tell you, that's the culture that is in the building, though, too. You got Slay talking about Devontae Smith. You have Fletcher Cox talking about Jalen Carter. You have all those guys that are trying to pass the baton and letting these younger players know what the level of play is in the building. Those guys have all risen through the ranks because other guys were giving them the praise as they were coming along. And it's a passing of the baton. So to me, that's why that culture, the reason that the Eagles win big games is because of exactly what you're hearing in the offseason. Man, this guy here, Devontae Smith's going to be the number one. He's going to be the best player there is. And in Dallas, you got an owner opening his fat face. You got him and everyone talking about expectations, and you're talking again about Dallas. My God almighty. Insanity's talking about the same crap every year. I feel like I'm going to have my head explode every time I hear someone go, the Cowboys are Super Bowl contenders. You're like, why? You haven't won a meaningful game in 30 years. I mean, seriously, you were still on MySpace.
Because they love ratings. That's what it is. They hype up the Cowboys.
Mark, that's it. Mark, that's
it.
It's here's the two things you do with Eagle and Cowboy. You infuriate Eagle fans and you overhype Cowboy fans. And that's what networks like to do.
Oh, it's the nectar of the gods to them, to just either piss us off as Philadelphia fans or just hype up the Cowboys. You know what? When they hype them up, it only makes their downfall so much more enjoyable.
Oh, hey, watching the Cowboys sit around and be the Kardashians of the NFL is hilarious. I mean, they're totally the Kardashians. I mean, look, we're sitting here doing a post-game show, but I would like to do a post-mortem. Because that thing, like you said, Bill, I mean, I wanted to go wash my car in the second quarter because we're sitting there. That was the Trey Sermon game and trying to figure out if you're going to carry more O linemen, more D linemen, linebackers, or maybe more secondary guys. It was all about the Eagles are in a – dude, 99% of that roster was set going into that thing tonight. And they're looking for one or two dudes. And Trey Sermon was on display. And unfortunately, he didn't do anything to keep himself in the graces to keep a job. I do not believe that guy makes the roster. Maybe he's a guy that's going to go on the practice squad because they like him. I mean, the Eagles like this kid. They wanted him. Look at the opportunity they gave him in the fourth quarter here. So for me, I mean, it was about him. Some of the secondary guys, Ricks, okay. You looked at some of the offensive linemen, Tanner McKee. I mean, they were just happy that, in my opinion, Marcus Mariota had a good moment. And as soon as that good moment happened, they got his ass out of there because they want him going into the regular season feeling pretty good about it. And so did they. They pulled him early because they wanted to feel better about themselves, not about Marcus Mariota.
Dan, who do you think is going to be the other starting safety on this team? Obviously, Blankenship's got the one spot locked up, but they dress every other safety. Who do you think's got that spot?
I'll tell you something, because Marcus is Paisan, and I love the way he has his attitude and the way he has energy and the way he came out of the gate, Bill, when it came to Sidney Brown in game one. I was that way too. But see, this kid here, man, he's got to learn to play in the sandbox. And what I mean by that is, man, I don't want to have to pull him to the edge. I want to pull him off the edge. But you got to play with controlled being crazy and controlled being a psycho out there. He gores people right now, which means this: he's not a very good form tackler. And this kind of plagued him compared to Devin Weatherspoon, who's the other guy that was the highly touted guy in the secondary at Illinois. And I talked to Lovie Smith about it. You know, he likes to gore you. What happens when you're in the NFL and you hit a guy? And what I mean by gore, you're trying to just throw your body into a guy. If you don't wrap up, in my opinion, in this league, you're not getting a guy down when you're just going into him and slamming into him. You're doing that in the Big Ten. You're not doing that in the NFC East. You've got to have form tackles. You've got to get these guys on the ground. And to me, I like him against New England. I would think about starting him because I can't see Mac Jones throwing the ball 40 times in that game. I think they're going to run the ball 40 times to try to test that defensive tackle and that triangle out. So I don't know. I mean, but he's playing with his hair on fire, and he's got to kind of calm down a little bit. But I like him. I'm with you, Mark. I like the kid. I think the kid's got a chance to be a bigger version of Bob Sanders.
Wow. I know our friend Derek Gunn has a similar opinion to you, like Bob Sanders and Sidney Brown and what he could be in this league. Dan, I do want to ask you about the other position that we were also kicking around here, and that's the linebacker position. You did not see Zach Cunningham tonight. You did not see Nakobe Dean tonight, so obviously it looks like those guys are going to be your starting two linebackers, and that's the way the Eagles like to roll. What do you think are fair expectations? I'll start with just Nakobe Dean. What do you think are fair expectations of Nakobe Dean going into what should be his first year as a starting middle linebacker?
I'm exceptionally concerned. I mean, I think the guy who did the dirty work and the guy who's the most underrated player on last year's team was TJ Edwards. 160 tackles, 100 solo. Do you truly believe that a kid who hasn't played in 2 years, limited 34 snaps, is going to go in there and give you 150 tackles? I don't believe it. I mean, I'm not even talking about his ability here. I'm talking about the responsibility here. I mean, when TJ was put in 2 years ago, overnight he changed the run defense and helped the run defense. You're talking about a guy who gave you 290 tackles in 2 years. You're replacing that with a guy who you're not sure can handle all that. Even when Seth Joyner was added to Gang Green, they played him at the Sam. Then they dropped him over at the Will. Then they moved him into the Mike. You're asking him to sit there and make calls for the defense and fits and slide defensive linemen, echo back to the secondary, and you're asking him to do all that and give you 160 tackles? Boy, I'll tell you what. And you're going against Belichick, the better coach football team than the Eagles on Monday. They have the better team. There's no doubt. But the coaching staff, in my opinion, in New England is better. You got the greatest D coordinator in the history of the league. You got a guy in Bill O'Brien who coached Mac Jones at Alabama and won 2 Super Bowls with Brady. I mean, they're going to be well prepared. So to me, I mean, boy, they're going to go right after, in my opinion, New England's going to run the ball, and they're going to attack the secondary, the safety position, and they're going to attack Nakobe Dean. I feel better with you, Mark. I feel better that Zach Cunningham is the other guy. But to me, Cunningham or somebody should have been the Mike, and you put Nakobe Dean. Like, I would have felt great with this. TJ Edwards and having Nakobe Dean at a Sam backer. To me, you're making the transition better. Give him a chance to play. Right now, all we have is hope. And so that's why I'm not talking. I haven't said one word whether he can play or not. I'm just talking about what he has to do.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dan. I've been concerned as well. But this Eagles team, it seems like they made the decision as soon as the season ended last year that Dean was going to be their guy. So they must be really high and confident.
Okay,
that
then, Bill,
he's
I'll
ready.
tell you, I'll ask you this then, Bill. Okay, then I want to know why you're so confident. Show
I'm
me
not.
why.
They are.
Show me. No, not you, Bill. I
Yeah.
want to know why the Eagles. Show me why the Eagles are so confident then. And get this. Hey, all that talk is great. We're married to this now. This thing happens next week. So all the opinions you have or I have or whatever, we're going to tee it up next week against, or 2 weeks against New England, and we're going to find out if this guy can run the triangle. What I mean by that is the two DTs in front of him and him behind those two DTs. Because I saw them against the Browns. I saw the second and third team Brown team knock them off the ball in that last exhibition game. You get a punch out to save a touchdown. I went like this. Okay, well, the first quarter, the Browns and their second and third team O-line had 100 yards on offense and 32 plays, and the Eagles had 11 plays and 28 yards. I don't know, man. I'm going to be very interested in to see why everyone is so comfortable at the NovaCare Center.
As someone who is confident in Nakobe Dean, and I understand, and look, I am not downplaying TJ Edwards in the least. He was, I liked what you had to say about himself. He was very undervalued, very underappreciated, very underrated for the plays he was able to make. But speed wasn't necessarily his thing. Quickness wasn't necessarily his thing. But he could run downhill and make, or coverage, exactly. I think Nakobe Dean can excel at those points. And I think his instincts will be overall better, and his ability to recognize a play will be overall better. Will it translate to 160 tackles? That I'm not so sure about. But maybe it translates to a couple more sacks. Maybe it translates to a couple more pass breakups. And what I do remind people is, as good as TJ Edwards was, you still had a guy like Alex Singleton before that who was leading the team in tackles, and actually one of the top in the NFL at tackles. So I think Nakobe Dean will at least be better than that. Whether or not he'll be better than TJ Edwards in his first attempt to be better than TJ Edwards and be a legitimate linebacker, middle linebacker in the NFL, that will remain to be seen. But I think it's not going to be as much of a drop-off from TJ Edwards to Nakobe Dean based on the instincts, the smarts, and the quickness that you didn't necessarily have from TJ Edwards.
So you're taking that from his college days, though, right, Mark? Because you're not taking it from his pro days.
Oh, I can't. This is what we do when we predict what a rookie or young player can do, of course.
Right, and nor can I. That's why I'm saying you're asking a lot of responsibility to not even let the kid get out and play first. I mean, here's the one thing you do as a pro when you get into the NFL, and it's so obnoxious because you don't know what you're doing. You play from behind. You look like you have a slow step because you're thinking so much out there. And before you know it, you're slipped and scooped and reached. And you're looking around going, holy shit, I just got 5 minuses. Are you kidding me? I'm looking around. I'm talking to my line. Because you're thinking so much. Am I properly lined up in a 3 or 2? Hey, am I lined up? Did I line up? Hot. And you have so much, and these plays come rapid fire like that. So again, I hear what you're saying, and again, and look, I think the kid showed a lot in college. Okay, that's great. But now you're in the big boy league and playing in the SEC East versus the NFC East. I want to see that translate in there. I'm not a wishful thinker guy. I'm a dude that looks at somebody on who you are right now. And all I know that Nakobe Dean, he's got 34 snaps. I don't know anything about him. And now he's got the green dot. We're going to find out against New England. And that's the worst team in the East, AFC. So, it's going to be a great test. I think they win. And, if they put them away early, it's a long night for New England. New England wants to make that thing a fourth quarter football game, in my opinion. Get it into the fourth, and they'll take their shot like they did against Brady a couple of years ago when he went up there. But they're going to go after Dean.
Let's stay with the linebacker position. So obviously Dean's a lock to make the team. He's going to be your starting linebacker.
And starter.
Yeah. Ellis probably a lock because of his special teams ability. And now you have Zach Cunningham as the other starter. Who do you think the fourth linebacker is going to be? Is it Morrow, or is it going to be this rookie Van Simmeren?
Boy, Morrow was on the worst tackling football team in the NFL, and people keep throwing me 100 tackles. So he had 100 tackles on the 31st worst run defense in the league, which means this, he was chasing. I mean, he's a solid dude, and I would probably keep both because you know why? The crappy special teams the Eagles have. Yeah. They need bodies over there. That unit was the worst cover team in the league. That thing was terrible, and it reared its head in the Super Bowl. You can't beat – hey, you can beat the Texans and some of those teams they played last year. You're not beating the Bills with crappy special teams and giving up half fields. You're not doing that on a consistent basis. So I would think that you're looking at safety and linebacker on keeping more bodies because, they didn't address anything in special teams. And that was a factor in the biggest game of the year. They didn't do anything to address it. So, I mean, who makes – I mean, let's look at this too. PFF, Pro Football Focus, had the Eagles as the third worst tackling team in the league last year. Okay. You lose 5 of your top 6 tacklers. And now you're not as big and you have less experience. Whew, man. Who stays at linebacker when you're talking about spare parts? I mean, think about it, Bill. You're talking to me about guys they just grabbed off the street. I mean,
one of them's going to be your starter. You got him 11 days ago.
Listen, here's where I give Howie the credit, though. Last year, he plugged them holes, and everybody had a career year. I mean, I tell you, I've never seen more people added, Mark, to a roster and to a team where everyone came in. A.J. Brown had a career year. Kaiser White had a career year. I mean, C.J. Gardner-Johnson had a career year. You brought all these – Hassan Reddick had a career year. I think his genius is looking at rosters with guys like Gardner-Johnson. What was it, August 30th? They got his ass before they even started the regular season, right?
As a nickel.
And because they paid Honey Badger all that money, Mickey Loomis goes like this. Hey, go ahead, have him. He's making $825,000 a year, and that guy leads the NFL in interceptions. He makes $8 million now. Everyone got a raise last year that Howie brought in. So I'm giving that guy the benefit of this, that he knows what he's looking at on what he can fix and what he can use, I think, on this roster to plug some of these holes. I'll give you this in this offseason. I think this offseason is better than what he did a year ago because I think what he did this year, I think he limited the damage of the losses that they had with all those top flight players like Hargrave and them dudes like, hey, Epps had 91 tackles. Kaiser White had 117. I mean, you're talking about a boatload of dudes that had career years, and he found all them dudes.
Last thing for me, before we let you go, who has a better chance to be on the Eagles in the upcoming season? Is it Ian Book or Jonathan Taylor?
Who's Ian Book?
Exactly.
Oh, wait, he's at Notre Dame. You'll have to excuse me, Bill. I'm a Miami Hurricane. So Notre Dame and Big Sills and convicts and Catholics, I think that guy's a Notre Dame guy.
Yes.
So as far as I'm concerned, that guy's – I'm going to have to call the Rock and tell him, hey, Rock, man, the Eagles have a guy they're blowing out here in a minute. And Jonathan Taylor has a better chance of being on the Eagles than Ian Book.
Okay. That's what I thought you'd say. Okay, just making sure. That gives us hope.
I had to stay honest to you here on Notre Dame.
Absolutely. Sills, great catching up with you, man. Thank you so much.
You.
Of course, everyone, you're already watching, of course, the National Football Show with Dan Sileo right here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel and the JAKIB Media family. Dan, great interview and great to talk to you. Appreciate your insight, man. Talk to you soon.
You bet. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. The great Big Sills, Dan Sileo, joining us here on the Lehocky Postgame Show, brought to you by the great people of Oceans Casino. We'll be back in a minute, and we'll speak to our friend Kayla Santiago about all things birds. She'll join us on the show later on. John McMullen will be joining us. Let us know what Nick Sirianni had to say about this preseason finale against the Colts. We'll be back on the JAKIB Media Lehocky Postgame Show.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com. EAGLES, Eagles.
Trying desperately to find anything of note from Nick Sirianni postgame, and so far nothing. So John McMullen will join us a little bit later in the program, let us know what was said postgame, the Eagles locker room, and all that fun stuff. But please welcome into the show right now, Kayla Santiago, who will be a part of JAKIB Media for the football season. Looking forward to talking more with Kayla here. Kayla, hello. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you guys so much for having me, getting ready for the season. I'm glad that preseason's over just a little bit. I'm ready to see Jalen Hurts and company back on the field.
Yeah, but Bill and I were talking about it earlier when it came to Anthony Richardson and his celebration there in the end zone. A little much for a preseason game?
A little bit too much, and he's already going to have an enemy in Eagles fans coming out in the regular season for sure. I definitely think everybody didn't want to see that. He was getting ready to ball out right there, and I do understand it. But from an Eagles perspective, just a little bit too much. You got to wait till week 1 at least to do that.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. But hey, he's excited. He's a rookie. We'll give him a pass. But he tries to do that again in Philly, he's going to have some problems, obviously. So you said you're excited to see Jalen Hurts in the regular season. Who else are you most excited to see coming up in a couple days here? What are we at, 10 days out?
About that, yeah, I'm really excited to see Kenny Gainwell. I was really impressed with what he was able to do last year, especially in the postseason. And I'm excited to see that duo between him and Jalen Hurts. I get DeAndre Swift might be that guy right there, but I think Kenny Gainwell is going to have that breakout season this year, and you're going to see a lot of him on the offensive side. And I know you guys were talking about the secondary a little bit earlier on. I'm really excited to see Sidney Brown, and I'm not saying that he's going to be the guy, but I'm excited to see what he'll be able to do from week 1 and then throughout the season. He's going to be a guy that really, really needs to grow from the start to the finish, but he's only a rookie, and I'm excited to see what he can do on the field, especially with this team, the defensive leadership.
Certainly, and it's something that a lot of us are looking forward to. Anything that you have gotten from Sean Desai is kind of this enigma. 1 year a coordinator, obviously, in Chicago. Then he was studying under Pete Carroll in Seattle, and now all of a sudden he's the Philadelphia Eagles defensive coordinator. Anything jump out to you about Sean Desai, maybe a little bit more blitzing, anything like that as far as the preseason has gone that you've learned about the Eagles' new defensive coordinator?
I do like the blitz a lot, and I think this year they're going to need to do that a little bit more. It is a little bit worrisome because I feel like year after year, DC is especially what the Eagles are dealing with, and it has hurt them in the previous seasons, especially last year with Gannon. I do want to see the blitz a little bit more this year, and I think that will be effective for them. We'll see if he does it, but I want him to kind of adjust on the fly this year. He's new to this Eagles team, and that's what we really didn't see with Gannon last year. I felt like he just wanted to stick to his game plan, whether it worked or it didn't. We need to see a difference at defensive coordinator this year from that standpoint.
Yeah, I went and looked earlier this week because there's been so much high praise on Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. So I wanted to see what was the rookie sack record for a Philadelphia Eagle, and it was Corey Simon with 9.5 sacks. You think that this Jalen Carter can do that in his rookie season with the high praise he's been getting from these veterans?
I absolutely do think so. I am so excited to see this kid out there on the field this year. He's the real deal, and I think that everybody knows that, and just him dealing with what he dealt with, being able to come in and say, listen, I'm going to play football. This is the team I'm going to play with. And everybody knows the Eagles locker room. It's really welcoming. The chemistry is there. And the years that they've been successful, it's been because of that chemistry right there. If Jalen Carter is getting that high praise, he's doing something right. And I do think that he's going to be a guy kind of like Micah Parsons was on the defensive end of things for the Cowboys his rookie year. I think Jalen Carter's that guy for Philadelphia.
All right, so how am I supposed to feel then about Nolan Smith? Because I've been saying Jalen Carter is certainly going to be a guy that is going to have I think, a great rookie year and all that stuff. But as far as flashy numbers, like you talk about 9.5 sacks, when I think of that number, and I didn't know that, Bill, it's great work out of you. I think of a flashy number, I'm attaching that number to Nolan Smith before I'm attaching that number to Jalen Carter. I think Jalen Carter is still going to be a more impactful player, but when it just comes to the splash numbers, the sexy numbers, I think it could be a guy like Nolan Smith. What are your expectations for Nolan Smith helping out Hassan Reddick in that pass rush, Kayla?
I think it's the same thing, and you want to see that from the Eagles, especially you don't want to get that past the front with the linebacker situation as well. So if Nolan Smith can kind of step up on that edge this year, it's really going to make a difference for Philadelphia. That was their strength, you could say, a season ago as well. If he's able to do that, that's what you have to expect. And for me right now, just looking at how he's played and how he's played in college, I do think that he can make that impact on the Eagles side. And listen, I think fans are already going to expect that. So if he's not doing that with all the talk around him and the positive comments around him, I think it might be a little bit of a problem. Listen, though, he's young. He's going to have some mistakes, but I do think by the end of the season, he's also going to be a big name. I think that this year, as much as I really like Jalen Hurts and Kenny Gainwell and all the great receivers the Eagles have, I think defense is going to be a reason why they go so far this season.
Wow. I like it. I like it. And Farzy, Nolan Smith has a chance to break the most sacks by a rookie defensive end. That's held by Derek Burgess, who only had 6 sacks, and that's the rookie record. So maybe Nolan Smith.
That's nothing. That's
that.
That's chump change. That's nothing for a guy like Nolan Smith. I missed that defensive lineman, Miss Guzzi. Kayla, when you look at the offensive side of things, it's going to come down to a bunch of guys that will get a lot of touches, whether that's even Dallas Goedert and that's AJ Brown and that's, obviously Devontae Smith and that's your running backs who are just going to, I think, have a very good season. Just the running back position for the Eagles, I think, is going to have a very good season. Is there one guy that you see Jalen Hurts relying on more than others to help out this offense?
I would like to see Dallas Goedert get even more in the action this year. I know that Jalen likes to run, and that we did see A.J. Brown, that connection towards the end of last season. But I think if you're able to get Dallas Goedert involved, especially on those little slants, and Dallas Goedert is not like Zach Ertz. As much as I love Zach Ertz on the Philadelphia Eagles, Goddard is going to be able to get that catch and still push for 5 more yards. So I would like to see him and honestly Jack Stahl as well get a little bit involved. Those tight ends, I feel like we didn't see as much last year. And if Hurts can get all those guys involved, I don't know who's going to stop that offense.
A lot of the talk all offseason, especially from me, has been question marks with this defense. But is there anything on this offense that has you concerned going into the season?
I think it's just about the health, if I'm going to be honest with you. These guys making sure that they are able to stay consistent and stay healthy. And I think you especially look at Jalen Hurts because I don't know. When you get into the season and you look at the schedule, it's not like last year. This schedule is a lot more tougher than last year. And how many games can you have where Jalen Hurts is not the quarterback in these games, where it might reflect your record, especially in the conference and the division? So I think it's just about health. I don't really have any big question marks right now at the moment. Maybe if there's some injuries, you do worry about the guys kind of backing up those tight ends and the wide receivers as well. But if these guys can stay healthy, I think you're looking at one of the best offenses in the National Football League.
Kayla, you have covered NFL drafts, you have covered World Series, and you've covered sports in the beautiful tropical Delmarva Peninsula, which I am somewhat familiar with. I am, if I'm not a child of Philadelphia, right after that, I'm a child of the Chesapeake Bay. Are you in or out on crab feasts?
Crab feasts are fun. I would say I'm in.
Some people don't like to pick the crab. Some people try to stay away from the crab. I just want to make sure I'm talking to somebody that's not afraid to pick the crab.
Never. It is a lot of work, I will say that, but it's always worth it, that's for sure.
The beer makes up for it. Beer makes up. You're not really working if you're drinking beer, you know what I'm saying? Kayla, I want to ask you one question. Bold prediction for this Philadelphia Eagles season. Hit me with it. What do you got?
Bold prediction, I don't think it's that bold, guys. I think that they're going to be on top of the NFC East this year. I think they go 13-4. The one game I do worry about a little bit is Jets and Eagles. For some reason, I feel like that might be one of the first losses of the Eagles season, but I think that they're going to go back to where they were last year. Now, they have a tougher schedule, but you can't sit here and tell me on paper that this Eagles team can end up where they were a season ago.
Yeah, I know you just made Jody McDonald, our host of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Media, very happy with your death prediction.
I mean, listen, I look at this team right now and I say Jalen Hurts is mad about last year, and that's where he wants to go this year. Now, I don't want any of them to have a little bit of that Super Bowl hangover like they had in 2017. They still get to the playoffs, in my opinion. I don't think there's anything super bold right now. I think you look at this team, you say Jalen Hurts is the leader. The only thing I ever worry about is hopefully it's not another Carson Wentz situation, but I think Jalen Hurts is a different guy, and I think you can see that just by the way the guys are rallying around him in the locker room too.
Absolutely. Yeah, going into that 2018 season too, there was all that question mark about should they be going with Foles? Should they be going with Wentz? Where there's a lot more security here. I don't think anyone's calling for them to go with Mariota this season. So
definitely not me.
We're okay on that. But I agree with you. I think the Eagles do repeat as the NFC East champions, but what team in the NFC East are you most concerned about?
As crazy as it sounds, I think the New York Giants, for whatever reason, the Dallas Cowboys to me always seem like they're really good on paper. They really have all this hype, and then they kind of fall down. I think the Giants did have a very good draft as well. And, you know, not looking at the Eagles, the other team in the NFC East, I'm really curious to see what they're able to do this year. I think the Giants are going to put together a good few wins. I do have the Eagles splitting that season series just because they're rivals. That's usually what happens. And I think the NFC East right now, I think it's Eagles 1, and I do think it's Giants 2, and Cowboys behind them, and then Commanders.
The thing that gets me with the Giants, and I have zero respect, actually less than zero respect for Daniel Jones. You can just call me a Daniel Jones hater, and it's not just because he's a Giant. But the one thing about it is that I do think they're a better coach football team. I think they're a better coach football team than the Dallas Cowboys, and I think that certainly counts for something. But other than that, I would agree with you. The Giants could be right there over what the Cowboys could be bringing to the table. Kayla Santiago, thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you more as the football season quickly approaches now that we're done with the preseason.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me, and go Birds.
Go Birds indeed. Kayla Santiago joining us right there from JAKIB Media. We appreciate her joining us right there on the Lehocky Postgame show. Now, coming up, we're going to be going to Lincoln Financial Field in a little bit, talk to our friend John McMullen of all the goings-on from the Eagles locker room, what was said by Nick Sirianni after the game, what we could expect, and why exactly. And I think Dan Sileo was pretty much on point here, Bill, when he talked about Marcus Mariota and just getting him out of the game when he was feeling good about himself because they want his confidence high going into the season. I think, the fact that he played in this game and played so briefly, just goes to confirm what everyone was pretty much assuming going into the game anyway, which is Marcus Mariota is your number 2 quarterback and the backup to Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, Sills was on fire tonight at midnight, right? He had a lot of energy tonight. But it was reported before the game that they were going to play Mariota for one series. And I think they probably had their fingers crossed that it wasn't going to be ugly. and it was okay. You just have to hope that we're not going to even have to find out this season whether or not our backup quarterback is good enough. Let's hope that Hurts puts together a full 17-game regular season and then into the playoffs.
Absolutely. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk to our good friend, John McMullen from Lincoln Financial Field, of all that's happening at the Link post preseason game number 3.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com. EAGLES, Eagles.
Apparently, Nick Sirianni and John Thierry could confirm or deny this for us, but welcome into the JAKIB Media Lehocky Postgame show here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, brought to you by the great people at Ocean Casino. Go for the live show, go for the win. Without further ado, let's go to Lincoln Financial Field, talk to our man, John McMullen. John, apparently Nick Sirianni was reminding the team that Reed Blankenship played a lot in preseason game number 3 last year and more or less carved out a spot for himself on the roster. Is that what he said postgame?
Well, he mentioned a couple. He mentioned Austin Eckler specifically as somebody who sort of made it with the last preseason game. He said, back in 2016, 2017, he wasn't exactly sure the year, and I haven't checked it, but Austin Eckler wasn't going to make the team, and all of a sudden he had a great last preseason game. They put him on there, and obviously the rest is history. He's turned into one of the best running backs in the NFL. Reed's a good example as well. And he made the roster, but, I asked Nick specifically about tilting things with this last game because, they've been working since mid-April. So there's a large sample size when it comes to these players. And you bring up Reed specifically, like Reed started to distance himself last year when they put the pads on in practice. So, it's much more important to show up and practice on a consistent basis than just have a splash moment or something like that in a preseason game. But I get it from a fan perspective because that's kind of all they see now, right? So, they get excited by Tanner McKee playing well or Eli Ricks making a pick six, and it's not as important. You go back to the joint practice on Tuesday. Tanner McKee didn't get a rep. He didn't get a rep because he wasn't on the first or the second team. And those guys were all getting the reps in the practice. So it's not good for fans, but I wouldn't get too overreactionary to these preseason games.
Hey, what's going on, John? How are you, man?
Doing well. How are you, Bill?
Not too bad. Preseason's over, man. Season's almost here, so we're all doing well here. We're all doing well. Was there anybody that didn't dress tonight that you were surprised about?
No. The one guy would have been Mario Goodrich, but he's got a little bit of a groin, so it's more injury precaution than anything else. Everybody else, Derek Barnett, I know some fans. I've been trying to tell him he's going to make this team. I'm sorry, but he's going to make the team.
You got to tell Jody that. You got to apologize
I got
to
tell
Jody.
Jody that consistently. I'm just looking at the list. I just picked it up. There were so many players.
Kentavious Street didn't dress, which I thought was surprising.
Yeah, Kentavious is a guy, and he doesn't have any injury issues. So, I don't, numbers wise, I don't see how Kentavious Street makes this team, but you look at him and say he's not playing in preseason. That's a good sign. So, yeah, that's a good poll, Bill. He's probably the biggest surprise of the guys who didn't dress, I would say. Now, the safeties, all the safeties but Reed Blankenship dressed, and, they're going full bore on this subterfuge. They're all going to make the team, every single one of them. But they don't want to let on who they're going to start week 1 in Foxborough.
Do you think they kind of did tonight? Terrell Evans barely out there tonight. Sidney Brown played a lot of the game. Kayvon Wallace was in there in the fourth quarter.
Well, they did with Sidney and Kayvon, but not even Sidney, because Sidney needs the reps as a young player with Kayvon. So I put Kayvon aside. It's like 2 weeks ago. Kayvon's going to be here as a special teams player, but Justin Evans, and I describe it as this. Do you want competency? That's Terrell Edmonds.
Right.
Coverage, that's Justin Evans. And really, if you think about the Big Fangio defense, if you want to make some money, bet on Justin Evans, because you probably get good odds if anybody bets on that kind of stuff. And upside, which is Sidney Brown. But is Sidney ready to go week 1? I've argued throw him out there, throw him in the deep end of the pool. That's the weak part of your schedule anyway. You could probably afford some mistakes. Let him get those mistakes out of the system, so when Aaron Rodgers shows up, he's ready to go, or when Patrick Mahomes later in the season, Josh Allen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you kind of go the other route and say, all right, let's start Terrell Edmonds, and it doesn't look good for 5 or 6 weeks. And then you say, hey, Sidney Brown, go out there and defend Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is going to take advantage of that.
And coming down the defense a little bit to the linebacker position, you didn't see Zach Cunningham tonight, which probably signals he's the other starter. But who do you think makes this team between Nicholas Morrow and the rookie Van Surman?
Neither. That would be my potential. To me, it's, are they going to keep 4 linebackers on the initial 53? Because you can do a lot more sort of juggling. Remember, the initial 53 isn't going to be the 53 for week 1. There's going to be movement and churning throughout that week. What you do with the initial 53, you want to keep guys on there that you think you can't get through waivers, right? So, Moro Ajomo might be that guy for the Eagles. And then they could put him on injured reserve after he's on the 53, he's only got to miss 4 games. Where if you put him on IR before, he's got to miss the entire season. So you can't do that. So there's some strategy you can play. And linebacker's one of those spots where you could say to Nick Morrow, all right, you're a vested veteran. You don't have to go through waivers. Wink, wink. They just did it with Fred Johnson. They did it before the cut down with Fred Johnson. They could say, hey, Nick, we're going to bring you back. We're just doing this as a procedural move. And we're going to put Morrow or somebody else on injured reserve. Then you bring back the 4th linebacker. So the initial 53 isn't as important as maybe people make it out to be, because I think they'll have 4 linebackers for week 1, but I'm not sure they're going to have 4 linebackers on Tuesday. The 3 that are going to be here are Nakobe Dean, Zach Cunningham, and Christian Ellis. And then, Nick Morrow, Ben Van Sumeren. Again, he had 17 tackles today. So people are going to look at that and say preseason, he had 17 tackles. No, it doesn't.
That's not necessarily a good thing tonight, by the way.
No.
The fact that he had that many guys.
By the way, Ben is very athletic, very raw. You saw that, he struggled in pass coverage. He'll be on the practice squad, but he's not going to be on the 53.
Yeah, I thought the word raw that was applied to him a lot leading up to the preseason was very accurate. I thought that was a really good way to depict what he brings. And yes, I'm happy that he'll most likely make the practice squad. Would you say most likely?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think, he's so gifted athletically, and you saw he's got some things you can work with. So
sure,
I think he's a perfect practice squad candidate.
We all know the offensive line needs to have Swiss Army knife guys that can play guard, that can play tackle. Tyler Steen, to me, in the preseason, made what I'll call like new guy miscues, whether it was back-to-back false start penalties. I know during the broadcast they said, I think it was Josh Andrews that stepped on Tanner McKee's foot. Upon further review, it was actually Tyler Steen. But overall, when he's asked to block and he's asked to do his thing, he does it rather well. He blocked 2 different guys on one play that allowed Tanner McKee to get rid of the ball into the flat for a completion. He's done some things to show me he can be that Swiss Army knife guy of not just being a tackle, but also being a guard. What have you made of his preseason and training camp?
I think it was tough. If you think about where people thought it was going to be, and that a lot of people thought it was going to be a legit competition between him and Cam Jurgens. That never materialized at all. Cam took every single first team rep, at least when Jason Kelce was on the field. So that just never materialized. But it was always difficult. He's a tackle by trade. He played tackle. He played right tackle at Vanderbilt. He played left tackle at Alabama. And you're telling him to move to guard at the NFL level and expecting him to hit the ground running. So that's not the easiest thing in the world to do. I think it was fine. Is he a better right guard or left tackle? Those are the 2 positions he played in training camp. Left tackle obviously played at Alabama. He's probably more comfortable at left tackle. But the Eagles moved him in for a reason. He doesn't have the longest arms. When you get to some of these tremendous pass rushes you're going to see in the NFL, that's going to make it more difficult for him. So I think he's going to be fine long term. And I think ultimately, if Jason Kelce ever retires, the plan is still Cam Jurgens at center and Tyler Steen at right guard. So they have the luxury, similar to what they had last year with Cam, to redshirt him, and you hope nobody gets hurt, and you hope they don't need him, and he can just sit and learn from Jeff Stoutland behind the scenes.
John, Devin Allen. I have a guy on my Instagram. He sends me DMs every day about Devin Allen and how much he wants this guy to make the team and return kicks. And I can't imagine a scenario where they're going to keep 6 wide receivers and keep Devin Allen around. Do you see any chance that Devin Allen makes this team?
The most impressive part about Devin Allen today was not the kickoff return, because we all know he can run.
The punt
he kind of blubbed it. And he rubbed, he almost, the flub actually helped him because, in certain circumstances, the coverage gets undisciplined because they see the football on the ground, and he took advantage of it, and, he can run past people. But he was really good as a special teams gunner. And that's where he's got to make the team. Because if you're the fifth receiver or you're the sixth receiver, if they're going to keep six, you got to play special teams. And kick return is part of it. Yeah. But I would argue a more important part is to find somebody who can be that punt gunner, because you lost Zach McPherson, who was their best gunner and is gone for the season. And I asked Nick about that after the game, and he said, "Yeah, everybody knows he's fast, but he's also tough. He's not like, older people know Ronaldo Nehemiah, was a track star, tried to turn into a football player. There's some other guys, Bob Hayes, far more successful, Willie Gold, but they were football players. Ronaldo wasn't. Devin Allen was a football player at Oregon, and he played, and he played at a high level. So he's not just a track guy. Now, he took a bunch of years off. Britton Covey's injury sort of opened the door a little bit. I'm not going to say, if you want to go 90-10, 90%, I would have told you before Britton Covey's injury, 100% he was making the team. Now, I think you have to leave the door open a little bit, because bring up our buddy Chip Kelly, can't make the club in the tub. He used to love to say that. Not the only one, but he said it way too much. So and that's part of it. If you're not out there, you have a difficult time making the team. Now, while I say that, Devin Allen missed the first 2 weeks of camp because he was in the tub and he was hurt. And he had a calf injury because he was running track in the off season. So he's a long shot, but he's a guy who kept the door open, and the Eagles will want him back on the practice squad. He's another guy. So I think he's a long shot for the 53, but the Eagles will bring him back to the practice squad.
Yeah, because another famous coach saying you can't teach speed, and Devin Allen has it.
Yeah, well, he can definitely. I mean, when you got an Olympic hurdler on the resume, you can run. So, and he proved it last year in the preseason. He had I think it was a 55-yard touchdown from the great Reed Sinnett. So he had that. He's got the 73-yard kickoff return. And he was saying, his track buddies are going to kill him because he got caught. And he shouldn't do that as an Olympic hurdler. Shouldn't have got caught.
Absolutely. John, answer this question for me. All right. Darius Slay, James Bradbury, Avonte Maddox. Then what? What are we looking at here as far as who makes the team as a cornerback, and obviously people stepping up in the Zach McPherson role? Who else is making the squad?
Josh Jobe has made the team. Kaylee Ringo is going to be here because he's a high-profile rookie, and I think they're going to keep 6 corners. To me, Mario Goodrich deserves to make the team. They need a backup slot guy, so that's where I know a lot of people looked at Eli Ricks, and Eli played well again today. And he's making a late push as well, but I think Goodrich is ahead of him. You still have Josiah Scott, who is still here, has some versatility. But, if they like Ricks and they think he can't get through waivers, don't forget that Justin Evans can play the slot too. He's very similar to CJ Gardner-Johnson. He can play safety and slot, so maybe you can go about it that way. So there's a lot of things they can do, but I think the player that has played the best in camp and throughout the summer is Mario Goodrich as that number 6 corner.
And I've been listening to you on Birds 365, and you've been very high on Reed Blankenship all training camp. I'm going to ask you for a bold prediction here. You think Reed Blankenship can make a Pro Bowl this year from the safety position?
No.
Not that high.
I mean, there's some really good safeties in there. Reed is, a first-time starter. He's the best safety on this team. Let's go in increments. There's still the Buda Bakers of the world, the Harrison Smiths of the world. I'm trying to think the NFC.
You got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on the Lions.
CJ's on the Lions. Derwin James is probably the best safety in football. Micah Fitzpatrick probably number 2, but they're in the AFC. There's a lot of good safeties. And Reed is on his way, but it's a little bit too much to think he's going to jump in that sort of category.
John McMullen, last thing from me. What did you learn during training camp in the preseason? What jumps out to you the most? What might have surprised you the most since the start of training camp and the start of the preseason?
I actually, I was thinking about that, Mark. It brings that up. This team has been very consistent. Everything that you expected has kind of happened, because I was doing my training camp awards and I'm like, who's the biggest disappointment? And I came up with Dan Arnold. I mean, nothing against Dan.
Yeah.
I expected Dan to push for a roster spot. Really hasn't done that. But I mean, we're talking about the third tight end, a veteran player that they signed for $500,000. Like, everybody who's supposed to be good was good. Jalen was tremendous. A.J. Brown was unbelievable. Devontae Smith looks like he's ready to take another step. Dallas Goedert, Cleveland didn't know what to do with Dallas Goedert. We talked about how steady Reed Blankenship has been. The running backs, maybe Kenny Gainwell. Kenny Gainwell is I think if you ask most people, they would say, well, maybe it's Penny, maybe it's Swift. No, it's Kenny Gainwell. Elliott Shore-Parks, our buddy, put together the carries, because Elliott loves training camp stats. God love them, Godspeed. But they're not meaningful except for the guys getting the football. In the first team reps, carries, Kenny Gainwell had 34. Number 2 was Boston Scott with 16. Just a massive difference. And then then Penny was 3rd, Swift was 4th. Kenny Gainwell's the guy in high leverage situations for the Philadelphia Eagles. So maybe that's the biggest surprise.
Good Lord. Training camp stats. That's where we are, ladies and gentlemen. That's where we've been for quite some time.
Not anymore. We are here now.
At least we're off the preseason. And by the way, this team is now 1-6-2 in the Nick Sirianni era in preseason football.
But at least we don't debate anymore whether or not the starters need to play in the preseason. You remember last year?
We debate it all the time. Jody asks me every week. I'm like, who cares?
I mean, it was a lot of question marks last year, whether or not they were going to come out slow. And then they went on that tear. I thought we were done with those arguments.
I wish we were. They don't value the preseason games. And that's why I say don't take them seriously. They just do not value. They can't highlight it any better. Sean Desai actually said it. We use practice. He actually said, we use practice to evaluate everyone. We use practice, not the game. Going to go Allen Iverson on you. Not the game, practice. Going to go opposite. Bizarro, Allen Iverson.
It very much is. John McMullen, he'll be with you guys doing Birds 365 in 7.5 hours. John, thanks so much, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. The great John McMullen joining us from Lincoln Financial Field. We'll be back to, as they like to say on the Birds 365 show, Birds 365 show, that is. We're going to put a bow on the show coming up in a minute.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pond Lehocky, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
EAGLES. Eagles.
But before we wrap this up, it just needs to be acknowledged. Okay, so John McMullen is doing a show in less than 7.5 hours now, so that's a quick turnaround. Bill Colarulo right here got back from Italy like 20 seconds ago. Did this you did Eagles content from Piazza Santa de Fiore in Florence. God bless you. You did it from the Coliseum out there with Legal Hands to the Face podcast as well. Legal Hands to the Face. Make sure you guys are following Bill on all social media platforms there. And I can't think of a worse way to crash back to reality than having to watch a third preseason game. That's a crash from the Italian high that you could be on, my friend.
Yeah, the only thing that would have been worse is if there was a fourth preseason game, but thankfully we don't have those anymore. But as far as I used to work for the Eagles. I used to be down on the sideline, and they always would finish the preseason. I don't know if you remember, against the New York Jets.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
And no one ever played in that game, and the games would always just drag on and on and on. You wanted them to institute that running clock like they do, the mercy rule. It was brutal, man. So that was worse. So at least this is it. 3 preseason games, we're done, and now we can turn our focus to what we've been waiting for since February, man.
Mm-hmm. I'll ask you the same question I asked John McMullen. Bill, what'd you learn from this training camp and preseason?
Really, you learned everything that I thought going in. The offense is going to be very, very good. These guys look like they have a ton of talent on the offensive side of the ball. The defensive line looks very, very deep, and the question marks that we thought we had at the beginning of training camp, I think we still have. How good can the linebackers and the safeties be? We all have high hopes for Nakobe Dean and Reed Blankenship, but can they play a full season as your starters and be good enough? I don't even think Nakobe Dean needs to be great. He has the potential to be great, but I don't think we need him to be great. As long as he is good enough at that linebacker position and that off-ball linebacker, whoever it's going to be, Zach Cunningham, Christian Ellis, as long as they're good enough, this team can go very, very far. But I still think those 2 question marks exist for us.
I'll tell you what I learned. And look, Cam Jurgens from jump was your starting right guard. I think the safety position is going to go to Terrell Evans to be your starter, and obviously Nakobe Dean, your middle linebacker. But what I really did learn is that practice is more important than games. And why did I learn that this year versus any other year that they've had the joint practices, really been running wild with the joint practices? I watched Marcus Mariota be really bad at football in every game he played in, but somehow he practiced well, and he is your number 2 starter behind Jalen Hurts, which is fine. Now, last year, you at least saw Jalen Hurts play a little bit in the preseason. Not saying he should have played this year. You don't need to see him this year playing in the preseason. But practice is 1,000 times more important than the game. So I'll ask again, why the hell are we even playing these games? But they got to play them anyway.
Yeah, and when you say practice, I think you also have to throw the word joint in front of it. Joint practice. So these joint practices that they're doing now, Sirianni has said it, they're getting a lot out of these, a lot more than they can get in these preseason games. And the nice part about it is your quarterback doesn't get hit. So you don't have to worry. You can still run full hitting without your quarterback taking a big hit. So I'm all for the joint practices. And don't make the worst part of these preseason games really is the season ticket holders have to pay full price for the damn tickets. That's the worst part of it.
Yeah. That's where I see like the families of 7 finally being able to go to a game because someone is just throwing tickets their way regardless.
I guess that's good. Positive. Yeah, that's the positive.
Absolutely. Bill Colarulo, it has been such a joy to work with you in a couple of the preseason games that we did, 2 preseason games together. We've done a couple other shows together as well. Look forward to working with you when the regular season gets underway. 16 days away, my friend. Can't wait. Can't wait for everything to get underway. Bill, thanks so much, brother.
Yeah, Farzy, it's been a pleasure. And guys, if you're watching, check me out tomorrow. I'm going to be filling in for Derek Gunn on Sports Take with Rob Ellis. So check us out. We'll be talking more Eagles, a little bit of Phillies. Should be fun. And Farzy, you got your morning show, right?
I got my morning show coming up in 5 hours and 15 minutes. Yep, I think that's about right. So yeah, I'll be on the Farzy Show right here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel as well as the Farzy Show YouTube channel. Then tomorrow night, Phillies Cardinals start a 3-game series. I'll be doing Fighting's post-game show after that game right here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. For Bill Colarulo, for Kayla Santiago, for Big Sills, Dan Sileo, for John McMullen, for Tone DeShields, produced the show, for everyone in the chat, appreciate you. Hi, Babs. Hi, Duck. Hi, AJ. Hi, Paul. Hi, everybody. Appreciate you guys joining us for the show. This has been the Lehocky Postgame Show on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, brought to you by the wonderful people at Oceans Casino. Go for the live show, go for the win, and go Birds! We'll be starting that regular season coming up in 16 days. See you then.
Have a good.
EAGLES, Eagles.